The race for the White House is getting more intense as Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton trade accusations and fight over battleground states. And South Africa experiments with an unusual drug dispensary. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart. This is Africa 54. We begin in East Africa, where South Sudan remains mired in turmoil. The United Nations has extended its peacekeeping mission in South Sudan until August 12, amid increasing reports of renewed violence in the country's southern states. The mandate for the UN mission in South Sudan expired on Sunday. Friday's unanimous vote by the UN Security Council was seen as a short-term gesture, while world leaders consider either sending in more troops or imposing an arms embargo on the nation, or even both. Samantha Power, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, says there are alarming reports of violence in South Sudan's equatorial states. Thousands of civilians have already gathered at the UN bases in search of a safe refuge during street battles. The UN mission is made up of 10,000 troops, but was unable to intervene in the battles in Juba between forces loyal to President Salva Kiir and others who back the former First Vice President Riek Machar. Both sides are equipped with heavy weapons, including tanks and helicopters. Now, joining me in the studio is Brian Adeba, with South Sudan political analyst from Enough Project. Brian, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk about the fighting that's going on. Even though we understand that Juba is relatively calm today, but there have been pockets and reports of fighting here and there, some between the forces loyal to Salva Kiir and Riek Machar. What do we make of this?
That itself is an indication of an escalation in the violence that's taking place. There are reports of fighting around Juba, around the stronghold where Riek Machar comes from, and it is a very worrying sign for the peace agreement.
Definitely. Do we even know where Riek Machar is as of today?
Absolutely. We don't have an idea. He has said that he is around Juba, but no one knows exactly where he is. He's spoken to reporters via phone, but his location remains unknown.
And when you look at one of the issues happening, lately is the resignation of Makori, the Agriculture and Food Security Minister, who says the country has kind of headed to the collapse. He is no longer there. He has left for Addis Ababa. Is this a sign that Salva Kiir's government is headed for a total collapse?
No, not really, because Salva Kiir, Makori, is a member of the cabinet from a very small party that came into the cabinet because of the peace agreement. The collapse of the government because of that withdrawal is being overstated, I think.
And there are a lot of questions again surrounding the legality of appointing or replacing Riek Machar with Taban Dengai as the first vice president. What do we know about that? What does this mean actually for the peace agreement?
Well, it means a lot in terms of who actually gets to control the SPLM opposition forces. Is it Taban Dengai? Does this appointment make him the overall commander of the SPLM-IO, or is it Riek Machar? To date, the details on that are very unclear, unless I think Taban can prove that he has the support of the IO troops. Then we can say that he is in control. Likewise for Riek Machar.
And again, let me, quoting the Festus Mohai, the chairman of the Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission, he says the country's economy continues to head to a complete failure. And when you look at that, you wonder what's going on with the common South Sudanese person. There are so many that have been displaced. Others are dead already. What does this mean? Or what can the regional leaders do to stop further deterioration of the situation in South Sudan?
I think the leaders have been slow in responding to the crisis. To the best of my knowledge, I think that the escalation deserves more stringent intervention and dialogue and interaction. And I think we've not seen that. We've just seen a little bit of a reaction when they said they were going to send in, they were considering sending in a buffer force, and that died down. And I think that at this point it is very crucial that the IGAD countries step in with a reinforced interaction to bring both sides together. Otherwise, we're going to see a complete deterioration in the peace agreement.
You know, Brian, we had a congressional hearing on South Sudan just before the renewed peace deal between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. And now, from Enough Project, I read that South Sudan is headed to a political suicide. Is that your take?
Absolutely.
Is there a way of stopping this?
It is our belief that right now South Sudan is sitting on top of a cliff. All it requires is a small nudge and it will fall over the cliff. And when that happens, we'll have a scenario like Somalia in 1990 plus Rwanda in 1994, because what's going to happen is the ethnic fabric that has been holding the country together has deteriorated considerably. And we will have a scenario where there will be targeted killings of people based on ethnicity. And this is a scenario that we should all not look forward to.
And quickly, if Riek Machar returns, what next?
That's still up in the air whether he will return or not. Taban Dengai has said that he will step down, but that remains to be seen.
All right, Brian. Brian, thank you very much for your insight. Brian Adeba is a South Sudan analyst with Enough Project. This just into Africa 54. The United Nations-backed Libyan government has announced that the U.S. military has begun airstrikes against Islamic State terrorists in the Libyan city of Sirte at the government's request. Fayez Siraj, head of the UN brokered Presidency Council, says that U.S. warplanes attacked Islamic State positions, causing major casualties. The strikes mark the start of a more intense American role in the fight against the Islamic State in Libya. Still in East Africa, at least 7 people are dead in Somalia after a suicide attack in Mogadishu. The attack targeted the headquarters of Somalia's Criminal Investigation Department. Police say they killed 2 gunmen who stormed into the building after 2 car bombs exploded outside the militant Islamic group. Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack. Security officials had warned that the group might step up attacks to take advantage of any distractions caused by the presidential election set for some time later this month. The government of the Democratic Republic of Congo is rejecting fresh demands from the opposition that new elections be held and that President Joseph Kabila should step down by December 20th. Addressing his supporters in Kinshasa Sunday, opposition leader Etienne Tshisekedi said it would be high treason if Kabila did not launch the electoral process by September. Some Kabila supporters have begun calling for a referendum to change the constitution to allow him to run for a 3rd term. Tshisekedi returned to the country last week after spending 2 years abroad for medical reasons. Opposition parties claim President Kabila wants to remain in power. Sunday's rally drew tens of thousands of supporters. The race for the White House is getting more contentious by the day. Republican candidate Donald Trump is being forced to defend more of his controversial statements, looking to capitalize on those comments. Democratic rival Hillary Clinton is questioning Trump's expressed admiration for Russian President Vladimir Putin in view of allegations that Russian hackers attacked DNC computers. VOA's Latza Hoke tells us more.
In an interview with Fox News Sunday, Clinton criticized Trump's stance on Russia in view of the hacking allegations.
We know that Donald Trump has shown a very troubling willingness to back up Putin, to support Putin, whether it's saying that NATO wouldn't come to the rescue of our allies if they were invaded, talking about removing sanctions from Russian officials after they were imposed by the United States and Europe together because of Russia's aggressiveness in Crimea and Ukraine.
Trump has suggested he might recognize Moscow's annexation of Ukraine's Crimea Peninsula. In an interview with George Stephanopoulos on ABC's This Week show, he said he was being practical.
But if we can have a good relationship with Russia, and if Russia would help us get rid of ISIS, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, you're talking about tremendous amounts of money and lives and everything else. That would be a positive thing.
Trump also responded to criticism from a U.S. Muslim father whose son died serving with U.S. forces in Iraq.
If you look at his wife, she was standing there. She had nothing to say. Maybe she wasn't allowed to have anything to say.
The soldier's parents reacted angrily at the suggestion.
I was in pain, and all America felt that pain.
Referring to Trump's remarks, Clinton told supporters in Pennsylvania Saturday that her rival is not a normal candidate.
Somebody who attacks everybody has something missing.
Trump, who usually calls Clinton Crooked Hillary, made it clear that the tone of the campaign will not get any better.
Just remember this, Trump is going to be no more Mr. Nice Guy.
The latest polls indicate a very tough race for the top U.S. office. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
And joining me in the studio is Alex Chamwada, a veteran Kenyan journalist who is keenly following the U.S. election process. Alex, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Esther.
And you know, you've covered the U.S. election for a while now. What is your perspective so far of the U.S. electoral process?
First of all, thank you, Esther. If I compare with what I saw in 2008, because I covered it 2008 and now, I feel that the emotions are bigger. The divisions within both parties are quite visible, and it's more dramatic. What makes it more dramatic this time around is the outbursts and remarks of Donald Trump. So then, in that sense, I find it quite dramatic. And covering the 2008 and now, it's sort of, for me, a continuation. And given that Hillary Clinton has been there before, it's familiar. Many of the issues I'm covering are quite familiar to me.
And you're right, you followed the election closely, especially all Kenyans did follow the election closely, the last two elections, because President Obama was running, and also because they consider him as one of their own. Why the interest this time around? The
interest because, of course, they've been following the administration of President Barack Obama, so they would want to know what next after Barack Obama. Will the Democrats continue, or the Republicans will now come in? Who will win? Secondly, it's Trump. Trump is quite dramatic, and Kenyans love drama. It's quite familiar with how politicians talk back home. So they are following not just because of the Democratic and Obama link, but also the Donald Trump drama. And it's quite exciting to them how they are seeing the two politicians, answering each other. Yes, we can't say there are no issues. There are issues. It's issue-oriented election, but the drama bit of it is quite interesting. Yeah.
And some may be concerned about what's next in terms of the U.S. policy towards Africa, for that matter, or various countries.
Yeah, of course, pick an issue like immigration. There's been that perception in Kenya and Africa in general that the Democrats are a bit more friendly when it comes to immigration policies, and the Republicans are tougher. So again, they are seeing Donald Trump, being so tough and saying we will be tough on immigration. So they just want to know how will it go, who will win, and how will it affect us. So
now, from a journalistic point of view, you've watched also the American media and how the American media is covering the whole electoral process here in the U.S. What is the take-home message when it comes to covering elections? In fact, Kenya is going to have elections for the presidency next year.
The take-home message is, one, agenda setting. Yes, there are the politicians fighting it out and campaigning, but as media, you can set the agenda and make election issue-oriented. In Kenya, when we cover elections, issues tend to get lost in form. Instead of substance, we are bringing out form more than substance. I would like Kenyans to really understand what are the issues in an election. What does each candidate stand for? Secondly, technology. I've observed that media are quite advanced and relaying live every minute bit of it and analysis, so that you're not just waiting for political rallies at the weekend to tell Kenyans what's happening. And of course, Kenyan media is moving towards 24-hour news relaying. So we hope that we can pick useful lessons on how to do 24 hours continuous without waiting for political rallies.
Well, Alex, very well said. Alex, thank you. Alex Chamwada is a veteran television journalist in Kenya. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, a young upcoming African leader's love affair with wildlife. Stay with us.
health news and notes. This is Living Better.
In North Korea, few women smoke cigarettes, but over half of adult men do. Unlike other products, many domestic brands are available, but the government is trying to get smokers to quit. The Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un issued an anti-smoking decree in early 2016, though he's often seen smoking himself. That's North Korea's top anti-smoking official. She says that cigarettes are very bad for the health, and state television shows its harmful effects. This man used to be a smoker. He says that when he stopped smoking, his wife was happy and he lost that smoky smell in his mouth. North Korean state media say that male smokers are down by 8% in recent years, and that the country has reduced the amount of land devoted to growing tobacco. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
Rabia Hawa is a conservationist from Kenya, and she is no ordinary animal lover. Her passion for elephants began when she was just a child. Now she is part of an initiative, Walk with Rangers, working tirelessly to fend off poachers throughout her continent. Rabia was part of the YALI program at the University of California, Berkeley this summer, and will return home with a newfound knowledge and passion about animal conservation.
I think some of the highlights of being a ranger is you can see wildlife roaming freely on foot, and there really is nothing that can compare to that experience. I don't think that women should be put down or seen as inferior or even seen as incapable of doing this job. I've been doing it for 9 years now, and I think that I've reached a position where a lot of rangers, sergeants and colonels know me now. Many people call me Ranger Warrior, so I guess that's how they describe me. I'm Rabia Hawa, and I'm a Kenyan conservationist here at the University of California, Berkeley, through the Mandela Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders. I am so amazed by all the experiences I've had here in America. One, to be able to be connected to Africa again through elephants has been just a very moving experience for me, but also knowing that they're being so well taken care of and that all their backgrounds have been thoroughly researched. They come from such a place of pain, and they're getting so much love and so much care and so much enrichment here. Prior to coming to the University of California, Berkeley, I started seeking out wildlife rescue centers because it's my passion. I feel really empowered with the knowledge that I've gained, not only from the Mandela Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders, but also from all the different places that I've visited and the different methods of care to animals that I've experienced and participated in. And I think that these are all very critical in my solutions for the wildlife in my country. I found out about the YALI program through the U.S. ambassador to Kenya.
What we realize is that there are various
The dynamics of our class are very varied. We have people from all sorts of orientations, all sorts of religions, and of course different African countries. And I feel that having the views and the insights from so many different regions of Africa is really important in the greater understanding of what not just Kenya needs, but what Africa needs. Most of the time, we sit down at the dinner table and we reflect on our lessons. We are very critical about a lot of the things that we are exposed to. That enables us to think how we can modify the legislations that are existing in our countries. I've always had a connection with animals. With elephants in particular, I grew up in the time when poaching was really bad in my country. I've had to see my friends in hospital beds with bullet wounds, and it's not easy. It breaks your heart. And I don't think that it's fair for people to lose their lives over ivory chopsticks or an ivory spoon or a decorative piece that somebody wishes to have outside his home. It's a little ludicrous to have an item like that and to promote the trade in items like that when you know that it's directly linked to the death of humans. But we'll never stop because this is our future and we're committed to that with our lives.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. South Africa improves privacy and convenience for HIV patients. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. It's not just women who are having children later in life. Granddads are at it as well. Rock and roll royalty Mick Jagger is expecting to become a new dad, and fellow band member Ronnie Wood has just fathered twins. But are there health risks associated with being an older dad? Researchers say as a man gets over the age of 40 into his 50s, his children have a 5 times chance of increased risk of having autism. Older man's sperm can also contribute to the mother's risk of miscarriage. Doctors advise not to put off what you can manage today. Next up, access to a regular supply of antiretroviral drugs is vital for HIV patients, but in South Africa, the stigma of having the disease makes many afraid of seeking medical help, let alone presenting themselves publicly at clinics to collect the necessary medication. This ATM was one of the developments presented at a conference on AIDS in South Africa last month. It dispenses medicines for chronic disease patients, including the antiretroviral drugs. Medical practitioners believe the anonymity it provides is essential. Sub-Saharan Africa has the highest number of people living with HIV in the world, as well as the highest infection rates. And finally, a giant fish that once swam from the Gulf of Mexico to the Midwestern state of Illinois is making a comeback. Biologists are restocking alligator gar in several states where it disappeared about a half-century ago, partly in the hope that it will be a powerful weapon against Asian carp. That invasive species has been swimming almost unchecked toward the Great Lakes for decades. It turns out that alligator gar have a taste for carp and can grow more than 9 feet and 300 pounds, dwarfing the fishy invaders, and that's what's trending today. In Cape Town, South Africa, Creative Nestlings is a space where young artists and creatives from disadvantaged backgrounds can come together to collaborate. It is also a place where emerging writers, designers, photographers, musicians, and other artists can showcase their work. And VOA's Caroline Turner has more.
On any given day, you'll find Dilly and Furi, his friends, colleagues at Creative Nestlings, deep in conversation. Dillian and his wife Lunga started the company in 2011 to help young artists and innovators from disadvantaged backgrounds find their way by offering a space where members can share ideas. The network attracts architects, producers, filmmakers, designers, photographers, bloggers, writers, musicians, and other creatives. Members pay an annual fee of 750 rands, about $51 US.
I think our a lot of young people from the disadvantaged backgrounds are starting to really be able to express themselves easily because of internet culture, right? So now they're saying, okay, wait, you won't let us in the door. Guess what? We're going to create our own doors.
Carl Needley is an emerging music producer. He says spaces like Creative Nestlings are needed if young black creatives are to succeed.
I feel like African people, black people in general, colored people, have always been part of the creative space. It's not something new. We've always been creating. It's just that we were closed out. Whereas now we're starting to create our own opportunities where we don't need to be put into certain institutions and things like that.
With its sandy white beaches, Cape Town is widely regarded as one of the world's most beautiful cities. But like much of South Africa, Cape Town also struggles with inequality and an expanding divide between the wealthy and the poor, most of who are black. A census in 2011 showed that white South Africans still remain in control of South Africa's economy, just over 2 decades after the end of apartheid. Incomes for white households are 6 times more than that of black families, who constitute 80% of the population. Lack of access to good education has also left many blacks ill-equipped to compete against their white and Asian counterparts in the job market. Designer Tende Gava says working from Creative Nestling has helped him improve the quality of his clothes and caps, and he has learned valuable entrepreneurial skills.
Even when I have a singular idea, I sit within a space where there's creativity happening around me, so my single idea can expand into someone else's idea, or vice versa. So again, from 1 cap, 1 t-shirt, to 10, all it took was the consistency. The idea was there, but 1 wasn't enough. Once we knew that the 1 could pitch, was liked, could sell, it was about how can we expand this and make it something viable.
As a multidisciplinary agency, Creative Nestlings invests in ideas focusing on urban youth in Africa and the diaspora. They have formed their own cross-continental think tank and online platform called The Nest.
The greater goal is to have our own ecosystem as businesses, especially as young black-owned businesses within the South African space and in Cape Town.
Creative Nestlings also runs a mentoring program helping its members develop relationships with industry professionals. Carolyn Turner, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune into VOA's evening radio show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching and good night from Washington.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words.
Does this word mean something good has happened?
Unleashed. The president is sending Secretary of State John Kerry to the Middle East to help build a coalition to defeat the militants who have unleashed a wave of violence that has included attacks on Iraq's Christians and other minority communities, and recently the videotaped killing of American journalist James Foley.
Unleashed means to let something very powerful happen quickly.
It is like taking a leash off a dog and letting it attack someone. In our story, the militants unleashed or set off a wave of violence.
Usually, unleashed does not mean something good.
So, the next time you hear the word unleashed, you will know what this news word means.